Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Snackbox. Hope you all are having an amazing day. It's been a while, guys, since I did my last Chimera video, but now it's time again, and I want to show you this little team right here that I came up with. Here you can see it. So, now before, I got a bunch of people in the comments saying, "Oh, I don't have Galathir." You don't necessarily need Galathir, okay? He's not super necessary here in this team, okay? Basically, all he is there for is to place the decreased resistance and the block debuffs. So technically, you can replace Hilvi and Galathir with any champions. Best case scenario, one of them needs to be a reviver, but you can replace those two champions with, a reviver that places block debuffs or increased speed, and another champion that places decreased resistance, okay? There are a few options, and we're going to talk about replacements in a second. So we have Hilvi in the lead spot here, with the speed aura, intimidating presence. Why Hilvi? Because she's bringing that increased speed. I'm going to talk about the trials as well in a second. Then we have Galathir. He brings the cleanse. This is also very helpful. Obviously, the turn meter boost of Galathir's A1 and his A2 absolutely massive. And yeah, he's just in general a great reviver, right? So, like I said, what he's there for is mainly the decreased resistance, which we need to complete one of the trials, but also the block debuffs is needed, and the cleanse helps. Then we have Mikey, which is pretty interesting. This is actually the first time that I used him, I think. And yeah, he provides that increased attack on himself. He's self-buffing. This is a huge plus. Then he's placing decreased attack, decreased defense, and leech. So a lot of things that he does, very, very helpful. For a damage dealer, right, to provide all these buffs and debuffs. And then we have Firrol, also very important for the Viper form trial. Has decreased speed, has decreased accuracy, increased resistance, block buffs, I forgot that, and also Veil. And then very interesting, we have Geomancer in here, all right? This is the second team that I used him in, and his Reflect is absolutely busted. I would even say better than Gizmek's Reflect, but Gizmek provides all the other things as well. So in terms of buffs and debuffs in general, the total count, Geomancer does less, but his Reflect is better. Also, just, a quick mention here about the builds and gear. As you can see, Hilvi is in a 9-piece protection set. That adds additional damage to Mikey. Then we have Galathir basically in a relentless set. The other pieces are just for extra speed and resistance and so on. Mikey is in a merciless 6-piece merciless set and a zeal set, and then we have two 9-piece feral sets on Firrol and Geomancer, and that adds a lot more damage to Mikey's attacks. All right, let's talk about a few replacements for Galathir and Hilvi before we jump into trials. So one replacement for Galathir here could be this guy right here. He has the decreased resistance on the A2. Also, he places decreased speed and the pain link. He has leech on the A1 as well, and block debuffs on the A3 as well as a heal. There's also a cleanse that removes debuffs from allies that are negatively affecting stats, and then he mirrors them. So he's actually pretty interesting, and in this case, in this scenario, he would be a great replacement for Galathir. But like I said, you can replace Hilvi and Galathir, right? So none of them are really super necessary, okay? So you can pretty much pick a Elva as your reviver, and Elva covers the cleanse, the increased speed, okay, and the block debuffs. Now you can pretty much choose any decreased resistance champion, and you will still have everything you need to get to 25 mats. Okay, that's pretty much how easy it is to replace those champions. Now, there are not a lot of decreased resistance champions, so it's not that easy, but you get what I'm saying, right? So Balar, for example, has the decreased resistance, so you could theoretically go with Elva and Balar instead of Hilvi, and you would still cover all the buffs and debuffs. Or you could go with somebody like a Siphi. Okay, you can go with a Siphi. She has that block debuffs and increased speed. And Balar, you will miss the cleanse, but it will still work. Then another interesting option is not this guy, the other one, Togron. Togron has a increased speed, block debuffs skill, and also a cleanse. And then you need to bring another, decreased resistance champion. The only thing is, if you bring him, you need a reviver that places decreased resistance, and that's Galathir. There's no other one, as far as I know. But another option, Klazag, and around him you can build a whole different team, because he provides so much more than just the decreased resistance. Right? So he's absolutely busted. I mean, theoretically, you could just go to your champions and then filter for decreased resistance. There are really not a lot of champions that can do it, but if you have Elva, for example, you can take anybody in there. Crixia works. Deliana should work. Loriaka should work. I'm not sure what she actually does. Yeah, so she has decreased resistance and decreased accuracy. Skeletor, he was a free to play champion, right? Or daily login champion. So he can do it too, right? He can place even more than just a decreased resistance on his passive. He can also place the decreased attack and decreased speed. Very interesting, actually. Also, he has increased accuracy, which is kind of interesting. I mean, theoretically, he could be a viable option. Maybe I'll even try it just to showcase you or show you that it's working. So yeah, like I said, you only need to bring block debuffs, increase speed, and a revive. And you can replace those two champions. And then you will still be able to get the 25 mats. All right, now let's talk about the trials. So we have the 4-stop assault here on the ramp form. You have to place fear, deal damage, and so on. But I totally ignored this one because it kind of interferes with this trial chain right here, which is the most important, and I don't want to retry over and over again. The reason why I'm saying this is because, in the first cycle, you face the ramp form, you need to damage the Chimera while it is under decreased defense, and you have perfect veil on your champions. It's like 1.2 million damage, I think, or 2 million damage, not quite sure right now. But yeah, you have to basically complete easy and normal the first time you face the ramp form, and then the second time you face the ramp form, you can complete this hard trial. Now, if the fear procs, if you try to complete this one right here, which you also only can do on the second time you face the ramp form, this one with the dual bar. So if you have fear in your team and the fear procs, it can mess up the whole cycle of skills that the Chimera is using. And then, maybe the Chimera will skip a turn where it would normally use the stun skill and then not use the stun skill at all, and you can't complete this trial. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want to retry like 5, 6, 7 times until the RNG is on my side. That's why I decided to keep the fear out of my team completely and just, focus on mythical mats. Also, another thing, we have the Spirit Affinity on the trial forms. That means Magic Affinity is not so good, because if the Chimera weak hits on your champions, obviously it is much better to get the Basalts and so on. But when I have the mythical mats on the stun trials, I usually try to avoid fear, and I try to avoid weak affinity just to save some of my brain cells. if I have any left. I don't know. You guys tell me. Now, we also have the 3-stop assault on the line form right here, but I also ignored this. This is relatively easy to do. All you need is increase defense on your damage dealer, and then have 6 or more debuffs on the Chimera, and then deal 800,000 damage or something. It is not crazy. And then you need to absorb damage using shield buffs, which can be done easily with a shield buffer and a cleanse. But I also totally ignored this and just focused on trials number 3. So you need to damage the Chimera while it is under leech. Our Michelangelo is providing that leech, and then we need to deal 3 million damage, and then this is done. And here is where the decreased resistance is important. We need to place 10 debuffs on the Chimera within 2 of its turns. And the thing is, you can place the decreased resistance whenever you want, and then fill up the debuff bar, and this trial will still get done. That's why I'm bringing Galathir here, and Galathir also does all the other things and makes things easier. But like I said, you can use any decreased resistance champion as long as you have a reviver and block debuffs and increase speed. Okay, those are the most important things. Then the hard one is damage the Chimera using reflect damage buffs pain link debuffs or passive reflect damage effects. And this is what Geomancer has, the passive reflect damage effect, and it is absolutely amazing. I did it in like one hit, like one counter attack from the line form, and it was done because Geomancer's reflect is based on max HP, or has a chance to be based on enemy max HP. That's why he's absolutely amazing. Now, moving on to the Viper form. Only thing that I'm focusing on is trials number 3. Damage the Chimera within 3 of its turns while it is under decreased attack, and your champions are under increased speed buffs. Again, Mikey brings the decreased attack, super helpful, and then, like I said, the increased speed is necessary for this trial chain, which unlocks 9 mythical mats. Okay, on the normal trial, we need to damage the Chimera with a single skill while your champions are under increased attack and block debuffs. And this will not count damage from counter attacks. Here you need to deal 800,000 damage or more with a single skill. And this is not quite easy to do with Mikey. He isn't really a hard hitter, but you know, he's providing the increased attack with his A1. So you need kind of a little setup here, and you need block debuffs, right? Now, like I said, here you need every damage multiplying effect you can get. All the protection sets, Firrol sets, the Erratic Coronet, Boss Slayer, everything you can to maximize the damage output of your Mikey and make sure he hits hard enough. Mine hit barely hard enough, you know, to do this trial. I don't know if Helm Smasher procced or not, but we would have a look and I will show you how much damage he dealt. It was like 815,000 or something like that. And then I will show you also the build that I have, and then maybe you can, you know, see if you are even able to do it. Now, the hard trial, this is also pretty straightforward. I didn't use the block active skills at all from Galathir here, so you don't necessarily need it. Resist 20 debuffs while the Chimera is under decreased accuracy, which is provided by Firrol and also Geomancer, and your champions are under increased resistance buffs, which is also provided by Firrol. So you can pretty much do this with 1A3 of the Viper form when he tries to, you know, place the poisons and the poison sensitivity. That's like 20 debuffs in total, and if you resist all of them, then this trial is pretty much done. Alright, so enough about the trials, let's actually jump into the run and let's have a look. Alright, here you can see it, this is right before we go into the RAM form. Now, one thing that I want to say is, before we talk about the RAM form, with a champion like Mikey that has the Erratic Coronet and Nature's Ref and so on, you want to stack up as much damage as you can. That means you want to place as many debuffs as possible and ramp up that Erratic Coronet and Nature's Ref damage before we go into the RAM form. That is actually very helpful to complete these damage trials. Also, there are a lot of other champions that ramp up damage by placing debuffs like Aptoide or a Toshiro, you know, with a hits on leech and so on. So you definitely want to capitalize that, ramping up the damage. And here you can see Firrol was my dual target. He has the lowest crit damage. Now, theoretically, it could also be Geomancer, for example. It's not really that important, you know, here who's the dual target. It just can't be Hilvi or Galathir, or it's not that great if it's either one of them. But it could be one of them as well, but I don't think it's very helpful. And yeah, another thing is that Mikey actually doesn't do a lot of damage here. The decreased defense got resisted, but as you can see, without the decreased defense, he's not killing himself. He doesn't deal enough damage to kill himself on the reflect, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, the first thing that I'm trying to do here is get the decreased defense on the ramp form, and also have the veil on Mikey, and then, you know, we can start completing this first trial where we need to deal damage while the ramp form is under decreased defense and we have perfect veil. That's why Hilvi is also pretty good here with the A1. She's placing that decreased defense. As you can see, it actually worked. We also have the veil on Mikey because of the revive from Galathir, and now we can deal damage. Okay, now we can actually deal damage and start, you know, working on this trial. And that's exactly what I did here. Also tried to place a decreased attack on Leech, but you know, he actually kills himself before he can place it, so it is what it is. So yeah, another thing I want to say is that it's very important to save your Firrol veil buff for the moment when you revive Mikey with Hilvi, because he won't have any Veil and you can't work on your trial anymore. So definitely save that. So you have Veil from Firrol, right? And you have Veil from Galathir's revive in this team. But Firrol's Veil does work. Okay, so it should be enough to get this trial done. And yeah, now we just need to place 6 debuffs and 6 buffs, and then we are done with the normal trial, and we are perfectly set up for the next time we face the ram form. All right, here's turn 35. We are about to go into the second cycle of the ram form. There we go. Firrol gets killed, and now it's all about timing, all about doing the right skills at the right time. The ram form is going to use the stun skill next time. That's this one right here, the yellow icon, and we want to capitalize on that and have block debuffs on everybody. So it's very important that everyone is alive. Now here I have to say I have a very OP relic on Galathir. I have the Chrysalid on Rebirth on him, which gives him an extra turn every time he revives an ally. So that is super helpful, but you can do it without it. It's not, super necessary. It just helps a lot. And here you can see we had block debuffs on everybody. Blocked 4 stuns. There we go. Now we need to block another 3. And another thing that I want to mention is this A1. If you are able to block this A1, it definitely helps, okay? Because if he places the stun with his A1, right here he goes, and it actually got resisted, and also Mikey evaded, it seems like. But if he places the stun, he will get an extra turn, and we want to avoid that. Okay, so that is another thing I want to point out. But the second time I'm going to block those stuns is very, very interesting. Let's actually move a little bit forward. All right, so here you can see it. Mikey killed himself from the reflect damage, okay? And I think Firrol is going to die now too. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm basically asking myself, should I revive now or should I revive later? Because the turn meter of the ram form is relatively low. My Galathir's turn meter is pretty high. He will take a turn next. And in my mind, I'm asking myself, will I take another turn before the ram form uses the skill? With the amount of speed that I have on my team, the speed aura and so on, and all the turn meter boosting, I was pretty sure that I will take another turn. So you kind of have to have a feeling of how many turns are you taking when the turn meter of the Chimera is this low. You kind of have to have a feeling for that, for yourself, for your own team, and the gear that you are using, because that can be really, a crucial factor of when to use which skills. And, the only way to find this out is by doing. Okay, it is what it is. As you can see here, I'm playing with the question, should I revive now? Should I not revive now? And I decided not to. And I think it was the right decision. Yeah, I went with the A1. Then I decided to use the A1 again. The ram form is not even at the 50% turn meter. So I was pretty sure that I'm going to take another turn with Galathir. Now I'm reviving with Hilvi, boosting Galathir with the turn meter boost and increased speed and so on, and I placed the block debuffs, and boom, we got this trial done. Worked out perfectly fine, even though Mikey and Firrol were dead for like 2 turns, okay? Now here, turn 15, we're going into the line form the first time, and the first thing we have to do is place the leech, okay? Gotta place the leech. Unfortunately, here it is on cooldown, as you saw. That was a little mistake of mine and delayed the whole thing by 1 turn. And this can be very important, right? So you want to go into those trial forms with your skills ready. Okay, that is very important. Because now I could have placed the leech here already and then deal a lot of damage, from turn 1. But, it got delayed by 1 turn, and it's really noticeable. Okay. That is kind of the thing that I want to share with you guys. Always keep your skills that you need for the upcoming trials. It's very, very important. You don't have a lot of time, to do all these trials. Only like 4 or 5 turns. That's about it. But now we place the leech, and now we got to deal 3 million damage. And that's the thing that, Mikey doesn't hit hard. He doesn't deal like 1-2 million damage. like other champions. So you gotta capitalize on as many turns as you can get to do these trials. And yeah, that's kind of like the problem here with the 3 million damage. That's really a lot of damage for Mikey. He can hit for like 900 something thousand with the gear that I have, but you know, he's not really hitting that hard. So with his A2, now you can see the damage. Oh, I used the A1, so it's like, you know, 680, 690,000 damage, something like that. I think I had one Helm Smasher proc on the second hit. So, you know, it can maybe go up to like 800,000, 400k per hit. Then here you have 784,000. And yeah, you know, we're already at turn 18 almost, and I only dealt like 1.5 million damage. We're only halfway there. So yeah, here, you know, we are at turn 20, and this is what I was talking about. You can already place the decreased resistance, even though the trial is not unlocked. You know, only thing you have to do is fill up the debuff bar afterwards once the trial is unlocked. And here on turn 20, that's when I completed the first trial, the leech trial, the 3 million damage. It took me a whole line form cycle to deal that damage. Actually insane. But now I just need to replace one of these debuffs, and boom, the other trial is done as well. And we are done with the line form. The only thing that we have to do now is reflect with Geo, and that is pretty much, you know, done in one hit. So here we go. Turn 46, we're going into line form, placing the HP burn from Geomancer, which is necessary to reflect at all. And yeah, now we're gonna just let the line hit us, and that's pretty much it. Even though we have decreased attack on him, it doesn't matter. You know, he attacks once, the whole reflect trial is done. 1.5 million damage reflected. Let's move back a little bit. I want to show you the numbers of the reflect. All right, there we go. And it's like 500,000, 500,000, another 500,000, okay? That's all like max HP procs from Geomancer's passive. Pretty insane if you ask me. You know, super easy. All right, now let's talk about the Viper form. Let me move back a little bit, 1 second. So here we go. You know, at turn 24, and this is also very important, at least for me. Now, here Firrol is already at 50% HP. Mikey is relatively low HP, and Firrol didn't proc War Master, so he couldn't heal from the leech. I kind of didn't want to gamble here, so I decided to place, you know, to heal up with Galathir's A2, which is kind of risky because the Viper form will steal the block debuffs. There's no way around it, but at least I was able to heal up my champions and make sure they don't die, because that is even worse than the Viper form stealing the block debuffs. And the reason why I can afford that Viper form steals the block debuffs is because I have a buff steal with Geomancer and I have a buff steal with Hilvi. Okay, so I have two champions that can get rid of this block debuffs, and that's exactly what happened. Okay, and then it's absolutely no problem. Everyone is pretty good on the HP side. I can heal up, place debuffs, and so on. And the next problem, though, is that the Viper form will try to place all the debuffs that are on the Viper form onto you, right? So that was kind of like a little issue. So I did place the block damage, which definitely helps to survive, right? The Viper form only steals buffs with the A3. You already used it. That's the poisons and so on. And then, you know, the debuff transferring is the A2. That's what's going to happen next. But you can block that with block debuffs. Luckily, I had it ready with Galathir again. And that means I'm able to block everything that the Viper form is trying to transfer on me. And yeah, that's exactly what happened. So now we got all the debuffs that we need on the Viper form. It's trying to transfer the debuffs right here, but everything is blocked. Okay, perfect. So now we have time. Now we have time until the Viper form uses the A3 again, and we can go ham. We can just, you know, try to deal as much damage as possible. We need increased speed on Mikey, and we need decreased attack on the Viper form. We do have both right now, so we can start dealing damage. you know, you want to get this trial out of the way as fast as possible. And then we need to deal 800,000 damage in one skill while having block debuffs and increase attack. And we have all of that. And then we need to resist. Okay, so you can theoretically get all of this done in one cycle. You are fast enough. And yeah, it's definitely possible, but I think I didn't do it fast enough here, and I was only able to do the first two, and then I did the last one on the second cycle. So yeah, to deal 800,000 damage with Mikey is definitely not easy. You can hope for a Helm Smasher proc, but you definitely want to make sure you have all the debuffs on the Viper form from all your Firrol champions. And also the Brimstone is very important because we need those 10 debuffs. I actually forgot to mention that earlier. Without Brimstone, we don't have 10 debuffs. So that's the 10th debuff. Also, it adds another 5% more damage if you build your Brimstone champion in Firrol. Okay, so that's another 5% damage. So now we have decreased speed, we have block buffs, we have decreased accuracy, we have HP burn and weaken. So that's 5 debuffs that are placed by Firrol champions. And then Brimstone, that's the 6th one. So that's 30% more damage from Firrol. And now let's see how much. Okay, we didn't have a skill ready yet, but we replaced the increased attack. And here I want to get the protection damage bonus from Hilvi. Okay, I got Hilvi in the 9 priest protection set. That's, you know, another 10% damage from the block damage and the increased speed. All right, there we go. Now we have 4 more debuffs. That's 20% more damage from Firrol. We have all the debuffs on the Viper form with the Firrol damage bonus. We have the protection damage bonus. And now let's see. 659,000 damage, okay? Not enough. Not enough. But you know what? We have another try. We have another try. And I even think the A3 is not the hardest hitting skill. I think the A2 hits harder. I'm not quite sure. I didn't look up the damage multipliers, but I will do it in a second. So now let's see the A2. And boom, 810,000 damage. right above the threshold, what we need, okay, to complete this trial, and we got it done. So yeah, that's pretty much how it goes now. Let's move on to the second Viper cycle. All right, second Viper cycle, same thing. I again had block debuffs on my champions because I had to heal up. They were low again. I had to heal up, and now I had to steal the block debuffs. Very important. But I also have to place the decreased speed to get control over the fight. Basically, here I didn't have the block debuffs ready again, so now I can't really block the A2. So a lot of things went wrong here. Okay, I didn't have the block debuffs ready. I didn't place the decreased accuracy. I didn't place the increased resistance to resist those debuffs. So I just went in like, yeah, okay, I'm just gonna take the hit. I have 2 revivers, so that's gonna help. But yeah, he killed Firrol. Okay, he killed Firrol. The first revive got denied, but I had the second revive with Galathir, and now I needed to regroup. So it didn't go perfect here, you know, but I got control over the fight with 2 revivers. That was pretty clutch here. We got the decreased accuracy on the Viper form. And now all I have to do is place increased resistance. Because the next skill the Viper form is going to do is the A3. And try to place 3 poisons, 1 poison sensitivity every champion. That's 20 debuffs in total. And I want to resist all of them. And we need increased resistance to do that for the trial. Okay, so we place that. Now I'm going to avoid using A1s as much as possible because I also have a Purge Shadow Relic on Hilvi. Okay, I want to use the A2 so the Purge Shadow Relic doesn't proc. Here we go. All the debuffs got resisted. Boom. In one skill, we got it done. And got the 25 mats. So yeah, overall the damage output of my key and overall the damage from this key is not crazy. As you can see, we barely hit like 70,000 damage, not even. And you know, just above 1 billion Clash points, so definitely nothing for Clash, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for these rewards right there. 25 mythical mats per 1 key. You can run it twice. You will get the top chest if you deal at least 56,000 damage. And yeah, as you can see, Geomancer almost does as much as Mikey, which is kind of nasty, but yeah, 25 mats, no basalt though. Pretty quick run, to be honest, 36 minutes, nothing crazy. And this was actually first try. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is one of the easier teams to run, even though have to have pretty good gear for Mikey to deal enough damage. Also, I have to say the blessings do help. Intimidating presence, brimstone is super necessary. Cruelty on Geomancer helped, and the 5-star nature's rare for Mikey. Yeah. Alright, let's talk about the gear. Galathir was in a Relentless set, and I would probably build any Reviver in a Relentless set, so you can cycle back that Revive. That definitely helps, and also the Cleanse if you have it, or any of the buffs that your Reviver is placing. A Relentless set is so much better, in my opinion. And these are the stats. 374 speed, 95k, 96k HP, 3.9k defense. I try to keep defense right below 4k, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to explain it in a second. And then I went with, you know, a little bit above 500 resistance. You want to be at 550, best case scenario. I have the Chrysalid of Rebirth on him, which is super helpful, but not mandatory. He's completely booked both forms and the masteries. Then I had Hilvi in a 9-piece protection set, also got a 5-star blessing. And these are the stats: 364 speed, 90k HP, 4.4k defense, and 455 accuracy, which is right at the border of where you want to be at. Like 475 is, you know, the main goal, but it is good enough. 455 for Hilvi, because her debuffs and the stuff that she does is not super mandatory. It's just supportive. Now she has the highest defense in this team, so she will be targeted by the lion. And this is actually a very interesting part, which doesn't really play a role in this team right now. But if you have to do this reflect trial or the absorb damage with the shield trial, then most of the time I try to build, you know, a little bit less than 4k defense, because if you build more than that, then you will get less damage. Kind of want to min-max or find the sweet spot of the amount of defense you need to get just enough damage so you can complete the trials, but also be able to survive the hits. So it's, you know, for me personally, I like to be like around 4k, a little bit lower than that, and then have my line target above that. So that's pretty much how I'm doing this. But 4.4k defense is already a little bit too high for my taste. I like to be at like 4.2k max in terms of defense, because on the normal form, the Chimera will ignore your defense anyway at some point, so it doesn't really matter that much. But on the trial forms, it does matter. But you also don't want to have too much, so you don't get a lot of damage at all. So you have to find the sweet spot. And I feel like it's right at 4,000. A little bit less than 4,000 is better. And then have your lion target at like 4.1, 4.2k, something like that. So yeah, I have the Purge Shadow Relic on her with these nice little 2 gemstones, which increase her turn meter every time she places a debuff. She does it with her A1, but it's not, you know, super helpful for Chimera. But I just had, you know, a spare one, so I thought, why not use this? Completely booked. Intimidating presence definitely helps. And yeah, I also used her in the lead spot, as you saw, for the additional speed. And these are the masteries. Then I had Firrol in a 9-piece Firrol set. He's at 342 speed. He has a 2-star blessing, 71k HP, 3.7k defense. He's the lowest crit damage and 456 accuracy, which is a little bit of an overkill, and I'll show you why. Purge Shadow Relic on him definitely helps to cycle his skills back. Also, sometimes he weak hits on a normal form with his A1. Then you won't place a decreased speed, so that helps a little bit to maintain that decreased speed on the boss. Brimstone is needed for this comp to reach 10 debuffs. In theory, if you can hit hard enough with Mikey, you can also give someone a toxic set, but in general, I would prefer not to. And yeah, you don't need a lot of accuracy because he's ignoring 20% of the target's resistance with every skill, and that means you can go with like 350 accuracy and still be fine. And the reason also why is because he's improving allies' accuracy by 50, if they are under 3 or more buffs. Very, very helpful, as well as the resistance, that increases by 50 and the damage dealt by 20%. Very, very important passive. And these are the masteries right there. And then there's Geomancer. I have him in a 9-piece Firrol set as well. 80k HP, 4.2k defense, 324 speed, 561 accuracy, which is a little bit of an overkill, but it doesn't hurt. But that's just the stats that I came up with when building him. He has the golden elixir relic, but this is for other stuff. I think this was for the last event dungeon. He doesn't really need a relic. Everything that is important for him is being in a 9-piece Firrol set, having enough accuracy for Ultra Nightmare Chimera. That's 475 to like 550. That's the area you should be in. If the debuffs are super important, above like 300 speed, 350 speed, and then have reasonable amount of HP, 80, 70, 80, 90k, something like that, and then around 4k defense, then you're fine. As I said, this A3 needs to be booked 100%, so you have the 100% debuff chance, and then if his A2 is booked, helps as well as the A1. So theoretically, you should book him completely. And yeah, this is the passive that is absolutely busted for this Reflect trial. Whenever this champion is attacked, deflects 30% of the damage instead. It's only 50% if allies are attacked. And when deflecting damage on each enemy hit, has a 30% chance of dealing additional damage equal to 3% of the target's max HP. And you saw that it's capped out at 500,000. So if this procs like 3 times, then you're done with the Reflect trial. That's pretty much it. I had the Cruelty Blessing on him. This helps Mikey to deal enough damage for the damage trials. And here are the masteries. And then the star of the show, Michelangelo, one of the turtles in a 6-piece Merciless set, 1 Zeal set. And these are the stats. 46k HP. You definitely want a little bit of HP and defense on him. He isn't one-shot all the time, even though his passive helps a lot to keep him alive. So 7.6k attack. That's with the Coronet Relic. 145 speed. He's crit capped. 342 crit damage. And 364 accuracy, which is absolutely fine. You don't need more than that. And the reason why is because he is ignoring 25% of the target's resistance if the attack is critical. And this is very, very important to know. You don't need to have like 500 accuracy on him, which helps to build him with enough damage. That is one thing that you have to keep in mind. All of his skills that place debuffs will ignore 25% of each target's resistance, okay? It's very, very important. Then this relic on him is the best in slot. Yvette Coronet gives him accuracy, gives him attack. He needs both. And then extra damage stacks up to 30% every time he plays debuffs. Boss Slayer, and then Pierce defenses for additional 3% def ignore. Helps a lot. As you can see, he's not even completely booked. I would definitely advise you to do so, especially the A2 and A3. The A1, yeah, I guess it helps. 5% damage is helping, but as you saw, I did it without it. But yeah, I would say you should book him completely. And then here are the masteries. I went with Help Smasher. Yeah, guys, that's been pretty much it for this video. As I said, you can replace Galathir and Hilvi as long as you provide all the buffs and debuffs that you need. If you have the fitting champions, you can definitely do it without Galathir. And yeah, 11 trials, 69 million damage, not a big damage key, but you can get all 25 mats. Mikey and Geomancer are pretty accessible, or were accessible. Mikey was the login champion, Geomancer is an epic. Hilvi was available from the deck of fate, so at least 3 of those champions were available. But I would say this is definitely an interesting team, and maybe it will spark an idea for you guys to come up with something to get, you know, maybe 19 mats or 19 mats plus a free stab assault or anything like it. Anything is better than 0 mythical mats, in my opinion. And yeah, let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this team. Do you have any ideas on how to replace Galathir and Hilvi if you don't have them, or maybe even Firrol? I don't know. Maybe you have some ideas. Feel free to share them in the comments below. Also, smash that like button. It really goes a long way. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Also, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more raid content. YouTube algorithm's going to suggest you a video that you might like right here. See you in the next one.